We'll be starting momentarily. Hi, Liz. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. We're starting in a moment. Okay, welcome everybody to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. Today is Erev Shavuos. Tomorrow night will begin the holiday of Shavuos, the time when we celebrate the giving of the Torah, as we're counting down the last few days to receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. As we know, the holiday of Shavuos commemorates the giving of the Torah, the time when God came on Mount Sinai and gave the Jewish people the Ten Commandments. So today we will focus a little bit on some of the Ten Commandments, how it was said, and the concepts behind it. In the beginning of the Ten Commandments, God tells us, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. And before that, the Torah tells us, Vayedaber Hashem, God spoke these words to Moses, saying that these are the words, lemor, so to say. Generally, we find this word lemor, so to say, meaning, as the commentaries explain, that this generation should teach it to the future generations. However, the Medrash, the commentators tell us that all the Jewish people, all the souls of all the future generations were at the foot of Mount Sinai. So who is there to tell it to future generations? Then if we look in the events that surrounded the concepts and the ideas of Mount Sinai, we find some interesting miraculous events that happened. For example, there was no echo. The words penetrated. Number two, they saw what was seen and they heard what was seen. There was a mix-up, or was it a mix-up? What was the miracle? Why all the miracles? Why all the fanfare? What was going on at the time of the giving of the Torah? But if we look in the first word of the Ten Commandments, it gives us a clue to understanding and appreciating everything that happened at the time. The word Anochi is not a Hebrew word. In fact, it stems from an Egyptian word. But the word Anochi also is an acronym of the words Ana Nafshi Ksavis Yahavis. I am within it written. God begins the Ten Commandments by saying, number one, the moment a Jew studies Torah, the moment a Jew accepts upon himself the Torah, or as we study Torah, it is not some intellectual idea which is far and have no relationship with us. On the contrary, when we study Torah, we are embracing God in its ultimate essence. I am hereby inscribed. God is telling us that we are connected with God every single time we study Torah. So studying Torah is the most intimate relationship that we can have with God. That's why the importance of studying Torah trumps everything else, because the study of Torah is when one becomes intimately connected with God. But it goes further. Why was it an Egyptian word, Anochi, when the first of the word of the Ten Commandments? Because over here, God is telling us a deeper message. It is not only about studying Torah that you become intimately involved with God and you connect with the essential part of God, and your essence and God's essence becomes connected. But when a Jew studies Torah, the point of the Torah is not that the Torah becomes one thing and they become something else, but to integrate the Torah into our daily lives. To even take a word of Egyptian, to take the Egyptian culture and transform it into holiness, into something of Torah. Therefore, the introduction to the words of the Torah begins lemor, so to say. not only for future generations, even though all generations were there, but every single one of us has to make the words of the Torah penetrate us, that we should become a conduit, that we should become an amplifier of the words of the Torah. It is for that reason that we find, as well, that the comments and the miracles and the situations that happened surrounding the entire event of the Torah was also because all those miraculous events were making that the words of the Torah, the spiritual words of the Torah, should not only be spiritual, but they should become physical and penetrate the physical. Therefore, there was no echo. That's why they saw what was heard and heard what was seen. What's the concept of when you see something? When you see something, it becomes visually in front of you, that you can't contradict it, to the extent that the Talmud tells us when it comes to the story of when it comes to judges, that a judge cannot be a witness or a witness cannot be a judge. And the reason for that is because we have an obligation as a witness or as a judge to say what we see. Once we see something, we become blurred with what we've seen, that we're not able to find the right merit for that individual. When we see the words of the Torah, when we saw what was happening at Mount Sinai, it became so visual part of us and concrete part of our religion. In fact, looking back at what's the proof that the Torah was given at Sinai for the past 3,000 years, there's nothing else that has been changed in history. Every single event today that we find in history has some type of way of mixing it up that we don't have it accurate. They used to say that everything that's printed in the paper is false. They said, really? Everything that's printed in the paper is false? And he says, yeah, even the date on the paper says today's date, but it was really printed yesterday. Everything that we see in this world seemingly has some type of falsehood to it. But when the Jewish people were standing at Mount Sinai, that whole veneer of the false that existed in the world disappeared. They saw straight through. They were permeated with the absolute truth and spirituality, that they were able to see godliness at its core. They heard what was seen. They not only when you see something, it penetrates you. Their hearing was so great that it was as if they saw it. This is the events that took place at the time of when the Torah was given. When the Torah was given, everything that happened in the world and all the things that transpired around the world gave us the ability that we should have a better way to connect and relate to the actual world. Gives us a better way that we can see that everything that God gave us has the ability to change and transform the world. Take a look at the next one of the commandments. For example, the commandment to observe the Shabbat. When God tells us to observe the Shabbat, he uses the terminology, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho, remember the Shabbos day because it's holy. What God is telling us that when you work during the 6 days of the week, remember, where is that blessing coming from? From God. When you keep the Shabbat holy, that will bless the week ahead, taking the physical and transforming it into spiritual. The regular work that you do during the week, making it something of a spiritual content, realizing the blessing of God in everything you do. When the Torah was given, as we mentioned many times, the fusion of physical and spiritual occurred. This is all explained and seen in every single aspect of the Ten Commandments, of the way the Torah was given, from the miraculous events that happened around it, and to the situation of the Jewish people at the time as well. The miraculous events, to the words of the Ten Commandments, to the Jewish people's level at the time, gave us that ability that we can appreciate what it really means, the giving of the Torah. God gave us the Torah, the Ten Commandments, over 3,300 years ago at Mount Sinai. Ever since then, the world has changed. Heaven can be brought down to earth. It is our task as we live in this world. It is our task as we study the Torah. In fact, if you look back in the interesting thing that the Talmud tells us, that why the first temple was destroyed was because they did not make a blessing on the Torah. What does it mean they didn't make a blessing on the Torah? What's so terrible? So they missed one blessing. And the Hasidic commentators explain to us what it means making a blessing. The word blessing in Hebrew, bracha, doesn't just mean blessing, means to draw down. They didn't realize that when they studied the Torah was not just merely something of a godly, of a spiritual thing, but they didn't realize that the Torah is something which God gave it to us. It's a God-given gift that we can actually bring down into this world, transform the way we behave, and become different people. The Torah gives us the ability to transform ourselves from physical, selfish, materialistic beings to spiritual, selfless conduits of God's spirituality into this world. Every single time we study Torah, we have to be able to realize and appreciate the God-given gift that every single day is re-gifted to us as Jewish people, to not only change ourselves, but to change the world around us. Every single time we have the wool that we put on talis, or the leather that we make the tefillin, the parchment that we have, the mezuzah, these are God-given gifts of physical things that we transform into spirituality. We so too have that ability to do it to ourselves. Torah is there to be able to refine us. Torah is there to make us better. Torah gives us the ability that in every single thing we do, the 6 days a week we work, the concept of always having God on our mind brings a change to ourselves, and by definition changes the world. So as we approach the holiday of Shavuos, tomorrow night begins the holiday of Shavuos. The customs of Shavuos to study the Torah. Not only look at the Torah from an outside book that we celebrate on Simchas Torah, but to actually open up the Torah, read the 10 Commandments, let it penetrate, take a moment and meditate and think, what can I do from these 10 Commandments? How can it change my life and by extension, the life of the people around me? Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in today to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. We have it every single day at 1 p.m. Tomorrow afternoon, a pre-Shavuos talk. And we look forward to tonight. Also, we're going to have Positivity Bias at 8 p.m. on Zoom. So please join in. All the best. Wishing you a Chag Sameach, a happy and healthy Shavuot.